There is one thing we do know, that we are here for the sake of each other. Above all, for those upon whose smile and well-being our own happiness depends, and also for the countless unknown souls with whose fate we are connected by a bond of sympathy. Thank you, President Jay and fellow. Thank you very much.
Own fellow Rotarians, who's our guest speaker today, Keith Beck, so he doesn't really need an introduction. But one of the things that I found most fascinating about being a Rotarian is finding out more about what my fellow Rotarians have done and do. That's been one of the most inspiring things for me as a Rotarian. So I will share, as you know, Keith is going to talk about the Peace Corps, and he joined the Peace Corps upon graduating from the University of Redlands with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in literature. He became involved in management with 2 national retail chains. His last corporate assignment was Director of Human Resources, where he was in charge with personnel responsibilities for 300 stores. That's stores, not people. In 1987, he became the proud owner of Proforma, and for the next 2 decades, provided marketing solutions to local businesses, which included promotional, print, and multimedia. In the summer of 2004, Keith's mother had fallen and broken her hip. Faced with the challenge of managing his aging parents, Keith made a decision to make a career change again, and one more time to serve the senior community. He established Visiting Angels in June 2005. Keith has completed a comprehensive course on priority senior issues conducted by the Society of Certified Senior Advisors. In March 2016, Keith was elected to the Personnel Commission with the Livermore Area Recreation and Park District. And in June 2017, Keith was elected to the Board of Directors for the National Peace Corps Association. So please help me welcome Keith Beck.
Before you get started, I'll blind you so you can't see.
So
I guess the thing in back of you is...
yeah, that's that good.
Nah, that's not a very good one. Move them all the way over there.
Well, I have something to follow up about Jay today and his Texas experience because I'm also a Texan. And my folks live back there. I was born back there. However, the town that I was from is called Ranger, Texas. Now, that's an appropriate name for a town in Texas. Texas Rangers, Ranger, Texas. Jay, when I left Ranger at the age of 8, there were 22,000 people there. And when Carol and I went back a few years ago, there were probably maybe 800. So it's also one of those little towns that is not doing well in the state of Texas. But what I'm here today to do is to say Kasalelia. That's my second language. I can tell anybody that I know Pohnpeian because nobody knows Pohnpeian. Okay? And what I'm going to do is kind of give you a little bit of a preview about the Peace Corps. And I think most of you know that it was John Fitzgerald Kennedy that founded the Peace Corps, and it got actually approved and authorized in Congress in September of 1961, September 21st, which happens to be my birthday also. So we've got a couple of things going there. But Sergeant Shriver was the gentleman that actually took over and really ran the Peace Corps for the Kennedy administration. The Peace Corps is an organization that primarily introduces a lot of young people to the world and the world to America. And that's kind of what the Peace Corps is all about. And it's a nonpartisan, non-governmental agency. Although there's been some attempts recently to take it under some governmental departments, which I hope doesn't happen. However, that's what the Peace Corps is about. I'm going to kind of jump ahead. There's another slide in here about why did I join the Peace Corps. I'm going to take that now, and you'll see that a little bit later on, so we'll jump through that. 1969 was when I graduated from University of Redlands. Most of you probably know that in 1969, Vietnam was a hotbed. And so at that point, I had some decisions to make as to what was I going to do, career-wise, whatever. I got married in my senior year mid-term in 1969, and there were no deferments for the lottery or the Army at that time, or induction into the Army. So I had an acceptance to go to grad school, which I didn't do because of Vietnam. I was married, that was not a deferment. So Kathy, my wife at that point, and I decided that we would look for an opportunity in the Peace Corps. So we did apply, and then we got back, you know, it's kind of like, where would you like to serve? And it's like, well, South America sounds good, you know, various countries. But really, what happened was that we got accepted in the Peace Corps after going through extensive FBI checks and so forth, and clearances. And then they sent us this note that, would you like to serve in Micronesia on Pohnpei Island? It's like, where is that? You know, and I would probably say that in this room, there's not too many people that have even heard of Pohnpei Island in Micronesia. It's in the Eastern Carolina Islands. But my options, go in the Army, couldn't go to grad school, no deferments, Peace Corps seemed like a good one. Now, my bride at that point, Kathy, her father was a colonel in the Marine Corps. It was a little bit of a difference of opinion as to what we should be doing at that point. But Pohnpei became the option that we took. You'll see that Pohnpei is just one of the islands in Micronesia, and it's in the Eastern Carolina chain. And it has quite a bit of history. You'll see that the height of this island is 2,600 feet. The population is 34,000, and it's not that large. I think it's about 130 square miles. It's a lot of people on a small island. The other thing is that you'll see here 300 inches of rain a year. A lot of rain. Now, where we were, we're kind of on the edge of the island. The interior would get to 300. We would only get 200. Still a little bit of rain, you know. So that's what we were experienced with. So this is the slide that I've already been through about my graduation, Vietnam, and so forth. So we applied, we were accepted, and literature major. What do you do with a literature major? Well, you let them teach English as a second language. So why would they need teachers of English in Micronesia? Micronesia was a trust territory of the United States, and as a trust territory, each island had no common language. You go from Pohnpei to Truk to one of the Kapinga Merengue, whatever island that you were on, and you could not communicate because each island had their own language. So what the Federation of Micronesia was trying to do is get a common language so that they could manage and rule their country, so to speak. So that's why we were there. So where is it? Well, you'll see here that here's Pohnpei, Federation of Micronesia. You'll see a lot of other island groups here, but this is where Pohnpei is. And these are some of the other islands. This is called Chuck. It used to be Truk. That was a high-end area for the Japanese military and navy. And Pohnpei, when I went there, it was Ponape. But this is the traditional spelling of Pohnpei, and that's the traditional spelling of, it's really Shuk. So that's where we ended up. Now, here's also a map of Pohnpei, and Colonia up here, that's what was called the district center. So it was the major city on Pohnpei, and this is Soquez, and we were down here in Kitty, so we were about this area. this is not a road around Pohnpei. Let me see if I can take this off. This is a path. And I'll show you some of the paths that I had to go through when I was there. So I held down a school in this area. My wife held one over here. She was 15 minutes walk from hers, and I was 45-minute walk from mine. So that was our assignment. With the amount of rain and it was really a jungle type of an environment. So it was very heavily forested. Now, we staged in San Jose. We went to Hawaii, Guam, and Truk. And from Truk, that was all by airplane. That was okay. That was fun. We got to Truk, or Chuk, and we had to take this freighter, an island freighter. Okay? Now, let me explain a little bit about a freighter, an island freighter. It takes a lot of supplies from one area island to the other. There's one bathroom on the freighter. There are 4 bunk beds. And our Peace Corps group, Peace Corps 8, had 85 volunteers. It didn't work real well. We slept on the deck in the back here. The smokestack spewed out smoke and soot on us all the time. We were 3 days on that ship. When we finally got to Pohnpei, this was our first look. We swore we would never leave that island unless they got an airstrip in there, because the experience was not a good one on the freighter. So this is SoCAS. Whoops, this is whoops, I got it wrong again. This is SoCAS rock, which is a basalt columnar column rock, and I'll show you some things toward the end of the slideshow about a ruin that was built from these basalt columnar joints. So this is the way you got into the area where I was assigned. That is a mangrove swamp. That's at high tide. So what does it look like at low tide? Mud. You can't walk it. You can't navigate it unless you're in a boat. At high tide. That's the only way you get in and out of the place. So that was our first introduction. This was my family that I trained with. The father, this gentleman, and he had 3 sons. And you see how, it's typically an island type of a family. He was the ruler. Nothing went by him unless he had the approval. So that was the family, and then here's the wife and the girls. So 4 girls. This was my wife, Kathy, at the time. So that's where we stayed. That was our point of introduction for our training session, which lasted 8 weeks, and we had 6 8-hour days of Pohnpeian language training while we were there. That was primarily what we were doing. Trying to figure out how do we talk to these people and how they talk to us, so we had to learn their language. So, no place like home. Got down to our assignment, we had no place to live. There was a family that had their own little abode. So this gentleman here was the son of the gentleman here who owned the property and the land. So the deal was the son would help me with some of his friends build my house, hut, whatever you want to, you'll see it. And then he would receive that once that we vacated our assignment. So there was a real interest in him helping out. Here's some of the other people that were helping, and you can see we had things stringed out and trying to figure out what we were doing. They knew what they were doing, I had no clue. So here we start to get the framework going and the roof. The house that we had was 20 feet by 16 feet. So that was kind of the side, because you had plywood flooring, 2 4x8 sheets, so 8 by 16, and then another 4x8 and a second 4x8 area. So that's what the house was made from, or for the flooring. Once we got it built, of course, we had to throw a little party. So we did, and you'll see that all the flip-flops are lined up here. This gentleman here is one of the Peace Corps volunteers that lived not close to us, but he came over for the fun, and I think there's another one up here too. I can't really, this gentleman here was also a Peace Corps volunteer. That was the only time we ever saw any Peace Corps volunteers where we lived. So that was kind of our introduction to the other Peace Corps volunteers once we got there. By the way, the 85 Peace Corps volunteers in our group in Micro 8, when we went through training, our 8 weeks of training, once a week you had to go in and talk to the psychologist, and he had to evaluate how you were doing. By the time we finished our 8 weeks of training, we were down to 43 volunteers.
Wow.
A lot of people got washed out, and probably for good reason, because it was not an easy assignment. There are assignments that are called plush corps instead of Peace Corps. This wasn't one of them, okay? So here's my house, corrugated tin roof, little porch here. This was the entry door that you might not even be able to see. And then you're going to see some fun things over here on the side that I'll talk to you about once we get there. Of course, it was painted like nobody paints a house in Pohnpei. I did. So here's where we got our water. 200 inches of rain off this roof, down this pipe, into these aviation drums that I got at the Colonia at the district center. They were plastic lines, so they worked out well. Then they were connected, one to the other, and this last one, spigot into the house. Plastic wash basin. I mean, we were living high. So that was our house. This is even more important. This didn't come initially.
Yeah.
Outhouse, yeah, that's exactly what that is. And here's the little barrel on the back, and that's where we got our flush. Okay, we have to scoop it out with a little pail, and that's where we got our flush. The natives thought we were absolutely insane. They couldn't figure out what in the world is this thing that you're doing. So that was a real good addition to where we were living. That was a very important thing. Okay, that guy, if you can recognize, that was me. This is a little puppy that I rescued. One evening, I heard a lot of yapping going on. The rain was coming down in buckets. I went out to see what was going on, found the litter of the dogs. There were 4 puppies, and then the mom. And because I saved them and gave them to the family, they let me have the pick of the litter. That was kind of neat because his name was Coco. I enjoyed having, he was a great companion for me, and we actually fed him, which was kind of unheard of, also in Pohnpei, because they really wanted Coco when we left. They eat dogs. That's one of their things to eat. So he came home with us. At the district center, I also got these were Lane Longhorn chickens, and I built this little cage with a little rooftop on it. We got eggs every day from the chickens, so we had some other source of protein. So that was important for us too. And then of course, I had a little garden over here, which again, Pohnpeians, they just don't live like that. They live off the land. So this was really foreign to them. There's one of my crops. That is me. I did have a beard. I actually did have hair at one time too. But cucumbers was one of the nice things that we got as far as a little bit of protein. Rice is a staple on many of the outer islands or Polynesian type islands. Today, I hardly ever eat rice. When I went over to Pohnpei, I was 185 pounds out of college. When I came home from Pohnpei, a year and a half, close to 2 years later, I was 135 pounds. But I ate a lot of rice. It just didn't stick around. So rice was the commodity that was really the staple for the island people. Where did we get the rice? Calrose Rice, Sacramento. 25-pound bags, cotton bags. And one of them, of course, Calrose Rice had a big red rose with Calrose on it in navy blue with the red rose. And I had one of the Pohnpeian ladies make me shorts with a rose on my butt. So that was fun. They knew I was a crazy American. Okay, this is part of my walk to school. This is very typical with all this jungle. I never walked to school without my machete. That was just, you just did it. So this was part of it. This was another hut along the way. This is very typical of what you would see on Pohnpei as far as what they had. And you can see it was kind of a propped up home, you know, it wasn't real stable. Now this is what the walk looked like. 200 inches of rain. You see these logs, which you tried to stay on, but they were real slippery. So many times you'd fall off and you'd end up over here or over here. But that was my walk to school every day. So it was quite an experience, and I'm glad that at that point I had some equilibrium going on. This is one of the ladies that lived along the way. Never really spoke to her, but I would always wave to her as I went through her area on the way to school. This was my school. They had ages or grades 1 through 8. This was another teacher, Isamu, and this was our principal. His name was John. You see a couple of students in the background. I accelerated at this school in volleyball. See the height? My advantage, my true advantage, okay? And whose ever team I was on, they loved to have me on the team. This was my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade class. You know, teaching English in a foreign country with a foreign language is not the easiest thing to do. And I've always been asked, you know, did you make a difference? And the answer is probably not in the language. Probably in an experience of an American in a foreign country with the people living in their life. But as far as language, they probably know English as much now as I know Pohnpeian, you know. This was a brand new cookhouse. So they would boil a lot of rice in there for the kids. So daily activities, okay? Those are sticks. That's our laundry. Those are rocks. It's called lopalope in Pohnpei. You suds up the clothes, you put them on the rocks, you beat them, you clean them, you hang them up to dry. If it didn't rain, they dried. Most of the time, they didn't dry. So it was one of the, with our little hangover on the front porch area, that's where we hung up our clothes so it would hopefully not get wet from the rain. So what else did we do? Well, when I got there, this stream was going down the side of this rock. And that was our bathing stream. I didn't like to sit in it, so I diverted it. And I made a shower for us. However, you'll see here and here, that's me with my machete. The tree had fallen over and blocked it, so I had to remove it and get some more room for us to have the shower. So that was part of my job. Then we also had rock ovens. They were called ooms. That's breadfruit. So you heat these rocks up, volcanic rocks, get them real hot, and then they put things on top of them to cook or steam. This was one of the feasts, and that's my father there that I trained with. And the women were normally down here and the guys were in the back, and they had their dance routines that they did, which were their festivity ideas and fun. So these are pigs, okay? They were getting ready to go into the or the rock oven. Okay. There was a real, what do I want to call it, ritual if you were to kill a pig. You had to be appointed to do that, and you had to have a high level of title. And once that you would kill a pig, you would not kill it the way it was supposed to be killed by tradition, because they didn't want anybody to know how they did it right. So they would do it wrong. But they knew how to do it right. So it was a real secretive type of a thing. Okay, now why did I put this up here? Well, that's the lagoon. This is not the way I fished, okay? But tide. When I went out fishing twice when I was there. You would think that that'd be a great way to enhance our diet. And it was to an extent, but what do? You go out in the canoe when the tide is going out. The tide doesn't come back in for 12 hours. You walk on the coral, okay? Flip-flops. You have your machete. You see a fish, it's night. You see a fish that might be, because you have a palm frond torch, okay? So you have to have that. Torch one hand, machete in the other. You see a fish, you hit it with the back of your machete to stun it, you string it. So we did that all night long. You load up the boat, you go back in, okay? So back in the mangrove, the tide is up in the swamp, back to the feasting hall. And you invite everybody that you can to come. And you smoke or you cook the fish, and you smoke the fish. No refrigeration, right? No electricity. So you eat as much as you can, you kind of gorge yourself with the fish. And 2 or 3 days later, you throw it out for the pigs to eat because it rots. Not a good way to have a good feast, in my mind, but you work for it. So that's why I put that picture in there. Okay, this is my father again. And this is a volcanic stone. And what we're getting ready to do there, those are half coconut shell husks. And what we're getting ready to do there is what they call souk. And I'm going to show you some more pictures because this was a tradition too. This is back at another feast. This gets you a little bit closer to what it's all about. The roots that you saw in the previous picture, if you can see them, these are the roots that are pounded, and it's a kava plant. This is the inside bark stripped from that kava tree area, okay? A kava plant, if you don't know about it, it's kind of like drinking Novocaine. Once you drink it, your whole mouth is numb. When you drink it, if you're in the souk, you're supposed to actually drink at least 3 rounds. Well, what's in here? Dirt, gravel, ground up termites, whatever's in there. That's what you get when you pound it, okay? So now it's pound. Now they start to string it or squeeze it through the hibiscus bark, and you can see this running stream here. I've got one more good picture. Here you go. This is what you drink. See, he's happy. He's probably had a few too many, huh? But that's what it looked like, and it is a narcotic. It's I don't think it's addictive, but it's not fun. After 3 rounds, it's kind of like, where am I? You know, you're real happy. You're really kind of lethargic. Not much is going on, and any light you need to, tone it down so it's nice and mellow time. So that was one of the important things. And the stone, I mentioned the volcanic stone. When you get ready to souk, you pound a welcome with your volcanic rock on that stone. Anybody within hearing distance can come and join you. So that's the way they welcome people too. Okay. I told you about the logs that I went through. This is a bridge. Civil engineering, right? Okay. This was a bridge that I crossed when I went to a feast. It was during December. And when I went back from the feast, the tide had gone out. So walking up over this and trying to balance myself, I got up here and this log broke. I fell into the coral below and I broke a leg. I didn't know that my leg was broken, but I have a knot on it like cue ball, you know, I mean, it was a huge knot. So, at that time, during Christmas, the Peace Corps boats, the supply boats would come once a week. During Christmas, no. The Pohnpeians were out souk-souking and enjoying life, okay? I got a Peace Corps boat 3 weeks later. And why did I get that? Well, they sent it out because, by the way, this is like the Peace Corps boat that would come out with your supplies. Because I got my pre-induction notice for my physical exam to go into the Army. So that is the x-ray of my leg, showing that it was broken, that my Peace Corps doctor in Colonia, that was the only doctor that we had, was in Colonia. He shoved it under my arm and said, take this up with you when you go to your pre-induction physical, which I did. That was a little seaplane that we had. There was no runway, so it would take off and land in the water. We called it a bucket of bolts flying in close formation. It was very noisy and it wasn't real comfortable. But I got up to Guam, had my pre-induction physical. Of course, I was 1A, except for an extension of 3 months to let my leg heal before I went to Vietnam. Now, going a little bit further, here's one of the downpours. You can see all the rain. And here you go down the stream that we took our shower in, which is a little different than you saw before. Okay. So, my pre-induction physical, I went up there, okay, thank you. I went up there, they gave me the 90 days for my leg to heal. During that 90 days, the first lottery was drawn for the draft. I was stateside when they were still drawing in my group. They stopped at 195 and I was 204. So I didn't go, thanks to my broken leg. Nan Madol is the area that I wanted to talk to you about, which is a prehistoric platform island built on the reef. And it was built out of those basalt columnar stones from the volcanic plug on Pohnpei that I saw you on Soquez Island initially. And that was around 1100 AD. These pictures aren't really good, but this will give you an idea. And again, it was built in the lagoon. It wasn't built on land. The question is, how did they transport all of those rocks, all those basalt columnar beams to make this island? And we don't know. So this is what Nan Madol looks like. So if you ever want to go over, you've got to absolutely check out that historical site. So that's my Peace Corps experience. And one of the things that I left some information on the table. We have a memorandum of understanding, we meaning Rotary and the Peace Corps, because Rotary has worked with Peace Corps volunteers to get international projects going and assigned, and the Peace Corps volunteers help to get those going because they're in country, they know the leaders in their community, they know the language, so it's something that we should also think about and consider. I left my business card on the table with my National Peace Corps Association, the board of directors that I am, and of course we're always looking for funding for our projects, and we're also especially looking for funding for Peace Corps volunteers that come home. We've had 235,000 Americans that have served in the Peace Corps. So thank you.
Keith, I just wanted to kind of input here that if you joined the Navy, you would have had a great place to sleep and a lot of good meals every day.
The Posh Corps again, huh?
I had a question, Keith. That chemical or whatever that derivative that they got.
Oh, the drink, yeah.
So I'm thinking, would they use it like if they had to pull a tooth? Did they do any like treatments or anything, or was it just as a party drink?
You ever heard of pliers?
Yeah, but
No,
yeah, but I'm just.
it was just a social drink.
Oh, okay.
You know, it
I didn't know
wasn't
if it had
used for
medicinal
medication, no.
purposes. None. Okay.
Yes.
Keith, what did they do for more serious emergencies? Did they have any helicopter access or anything to at least get to the Capitol?
Not when I was there, it was all by boat. I mean, if I were to try to walk to the district center through the jungle, probably minimally 6 hours cutting my way through the forest. But there were times that if the rain subsided at least a week or so, we had a grass that just grew wild that was introduced by the Japanese. So they'd throw torches in and burn that off because it was so rampant. And when that happened, you would see these Japanese tanks and other items from the war, from World War II. So it was real interesting, but no way for emergencies.
I'm sure Keith will hang around, okay? And Keith, as always, the ritual choice between Livermore Olive